Well, hello and happy new year. I wanted to do a quick video on my spin or 2 cents regarding the Filmora Wondershare debacle that has been floating around on YouTube since Christmas, and to tell you a little bit more about my experience with the company personally. Now, I'm not going to talk about Filmora specifically, but what I am going to talk about is my purchase of Wondershare PDF Element for Windows. Now, I don't use the Filmora software. I had looked at it in the past as a replacement for Adobe software, but I decided to go against it. It didn't look like it would suit my needs, and I'm glad I didn't go down that rabbit hole because I ended up on DaVinci Resolve, which is much better in my opinion. This is a video about PDF Element and the perpetual license that it made with its users. Now, I purchased version 8 back in November, I guess, of 2021. I purchased version 8.2, I believe 2.27, and I just purchased the individual perpetual license. Now, I only had the software for what I'm going to guess is probably June, July. And then they did the same thing back then of 2022 as they did with the Filmora group. So a pop-up window came and it was asking me to do an update. Okay. So their terminology is a little weird because they were changing terms in the middle of their licensing. So what they thought was an update was an upgrade, and what was an upgrade is now an update, and you can see how that could confuse people. Now, I do understand where everyone else is coming from. So when you do purchase a product and expect lifetime updates, so they're going from major version to major version, from 7 to 8, from 8 to 9, and so on. So it's kind of slimy that they're going to turn around, change the terminology to be upgrade rather than update. It might be the correct term, but when you purchase software and they are going from major version to major version and then turn around and change that, it's pretty slimy. It really is. I mean, this isn't the first company in the history of the world to do that, but you know, at some point we're just getting sick and tired of these corporations taking advantage of us, and there's no real recourse other than going online and talking about it, which is unfortunate. You try to contact our support via chat, and half the time you're chatting with robots, or if you're not chatting with a robot, you're chatting with someone from a country who doesn't understand the language very well. They're not willing to escalate most of the time or to really dig into issues. I've worked in the past in call centers, so I know how it is. But at the same time, you can't even most of these software companies, you can't even reach out to them by phone anymore. And that's just even slimier. Like many corporate companies, many software companies will just not even talk to you. And that is just bad customer service in my opinion. So whenever I purchase software or do business with a company, I expect them to have a phone number I can call if something goes completely off the wall. At least email at the minimum, right? So because of all this publicity that was going on with some of the larger YouTubers, I thought I would put in my 2 cents and tell you about what I experienced with the company personally. Now, this company, Wondershare, is owned by Wondershare Group and originally a Chinese company. They do have offices here in Canada. But I don't personally really trust these Chinese companies. You don't know if their software is infected with CCP or communist propaganda, or if they're phoning home, or what is really going on. So I try to stay away from Chinese software as much as possible for that reason. Now, I understand that they do have offices in other locations as well, so I can't speak to them personally, but I am going to speak to the experience I had. Now, the first time I had an issue with Wondershare PDF element for Windows. Um, it was back in maybe about 4 months after I purchased the software. I was having an issue with doing PDF forms. So for my business, I have to do PDF forms on occasion. And when I do those forms, I have to program the forms to a certain extent. And when I purchased the software, I was under the impression, based on their advertising and also on when you open up the demo and you go into the certain fields, that you have a certain amount of features that you can actually use. So for me, I was expecting it to be able to do JavaScript behind the scenes and do some basic calculations, math calculations, etc., so that I could actually have these forms working the way that I intended them to work. Unfortunately, in my situation, I don't know exactly what version it was that I was having this issue, but they had been releasing updates probably for the greater part of that 8 months or so that I was using the software. I still use it. I just try not to use it for certain things anymore. But for the version I'm talking about, there's actually a field in there that you can actually do JavaScript, okay? So you can go in there and type in JavaScript and then click OK, and you're expecting the JavaScript to work. However, that's not the case. And I was tearing my hair out for a good part of a week trying to figure this out. Eventually, I contacted support, and after some back and forth, they basically told me, oh, well, it's the JavaScript features are not really in there. It was just sort of like something they had planned for the future. So, that's pretty scuzzy in itself, giving you the implication that the software is supposed to do something and it doesn't actually do something. And in a future update, it's going to do something. And I don't even know if that is in version 9, because I never upgraded from version 8, the 8 series of PDF Element, to the 9 series, because I didn't want to pay. Basically, I didn't want to pay. I already paid $104 Canadian for the software, and not even a year later, they're asking me to put down another $50 or $60 to upgrade to the 9 version. I mean, sure, there was a discount, but again, how often am I going to be having to do this? If I have to pay every year, it's no different than any other monthly licensing type of system. The whole point was for me to purchase a one-time license, and then hopefully they fix most of the bugs before they move on to the next major release. Now, in this case, they didn't do that. There's a ton of bugs in the current 8 series of PDF Element, and as far as I'm concerned, it's barely usable for my day-to-day activities. So I am not too impressed with the company outright, and I did get on the chat with them regarding this as well. And I basically just told them I'm not going to be purchasing any more of your software because of the deceptive marketing practices, and also because the software was so kludgy. It was so kind of like you were kind of fighting with it to do what you want. Sure, it has a slick interface, but the interface doesn't mean anything if the software doesn't work behind the scenes. And that day that I did have it update to 9, I had to go back, uninstall it. I talked to support again. I had to uninstall it, and then they sent me a link to the real update to the 8 series. It was the last one I found out after having to talk to support for a good hour and trying to get to explain to them, like there was an English barrier there for sure. This was over a chat, and they were having trouble trying to understand. I was asking the basic question to them: how is this going to be the last version of the 8 series? And they were just trying to upsell me on version 9, blah, blah, blah. And this is supposed to be their tech support line, not their sales and whatnot. And I kind of just, that whole experience just soured it for me. And I basically told them, no more. I'm not going to do this. I'll just find another PDF software that I can use for creating forms and editing forms, which I use on a weekly basis, or sometimes almost every day. So I've abandoned Wondershare and all their software products. I mean, I'm not going to go into any of their other products, but you can't treat customers that way. And as you can see from the backlash online, it just doesn't fly anymore. If you're not going to provide proper support, if you're not going to using your customers as beta testers for a year or two, which is becoming the norm, it's just ridiculous. And I'm not paying for trash software. So the biggest issue I have with the software at the moment, in the forms itself, if I create a form and then try to open it up a day later or whenever later, there's the hand for the filling out the forms. It stays as a hand rather than a text cursor. So that was the biggest issue I had, and it drives me completely insane when that happens. So, and I have to click around the whole form and stuff to try to get it to do that. The alternative is actually right now for me is to go, there's a little toggle switch which you can click on, which goes from edit to read mode only. So that usually sort of fixes it. But if it doesn't, then I have to click all around and 2 or 3 times at the different fields to try to get it to actually let me type into that field. And again, that's not the only bug. There's the software itself is kludgy and slow, and sometimes I don't know if there's a memory leak still in there somewhere, because every once in a while the thing will just fill up the system memory and I have to shut it down. It's not great. It's just not great software. I probably will be replacing it with something like PDF Exchange Editor sometime soon. I just don't know when at this point. So when you're paying for $100 plus for software, you expect it to work. You expect not to be the beta tester, and you also expect them to live up to their promises. If they're giving you a lifetime license to upgrade, then give them a lifetime license to upgrade. Now, it's not our fault that there's a language barrier here, that they thought that upgrade meant update or update meant upgrade. Not our problem. So if they want to do business here in North America, they got to learn the proper terminology and then not go back on their promises. I'm not saying this doesn't happen in North America or other Western nations. I'm just saying you got to do that if you want your customers to be happy. So that was my experience with Wondershare or Wondershare Group and the PDF Element product. If you want, please like and comment and subscribe on this channel. I do appreciate any feedback as well. If you have experienced using the software, please leave a note in the comments and let me know what your experience was. So thank you for joining me today, and take care.